You're good.
Okay, great. Okay, okay, I'm making sure it gets me. I'm just gonna make sure. Okay, it is. Okay, so this is 5th grade, so it's not. I know most of you are 4th grade. So, but in order to teach this, I was like, well, can I just do a 5th grade one? Because I'm familiar with 5th grade, and they were like, yeah. So, on your desk you have the first little staple thing is a packet. This is like your quote unquote lesson plan. Okay, you will have this for every lesson. Okay. The second thing that's stapled together underneath that is lesson 1 problem set. This is from module 2 at 5th grade, lesson 1, and we'll go over what these are. But I just want you to be familiar. You'll find out it's in the top right corner if you didn't know. The next sheet is just a single sheet. Is lesson 1 exit ticket. And then the next sheet is lesson 1 homework, and that one's stapled together too. So you'll have all of these with your stuff. You'll also have some fluency stuff, but this lesson didn't have fluency, but I'm going to go over it, or like sprint, but I'm going to go over it. Okay, so I'm going to start off, let me unfreeze it. Okay, this is what I do. This is just a normal lesson for me. Occasionally I have to take some more time for instruction, and I'll get time for everything on here. But you have to just find your own pace, I guess, is a good way to say it. And so this is a lesson. If I can get everything in, this would be a normal lesson for me, okay? Okay, so the first thing that they do is I do a fluency practice. On your little lesson plan, the first one, okay, you will see you see fluency practice right there. That's what that is. There are 3 different fluency practices. It says right there, multiply by 10, 100, and 1,000, place value, round to different decimal places, or place value. So there's 3 different ones. I usually pick 1 or 2, depending on what my class needs. And so last year when I switched with Jamie, her classmate needed another one that my class didn't need. And so I would switch according to what they need. I don't do all 3. I don't have time for that, so I just try to, it's a long lesson. You don't have time for everything, or you'd be up here for an hour and a half just talking and trying to get through it. So you kind of have to pick and choose what you need. So this is just the first one, and I put a bracket around it, so you know what I'm doing. You can follow through. It just tells you exactly what to do. It says this fluency activity reviews Module 1 skills. Okay, so this is a review for Module 1. Okay, where this is the first lesson in Module 2. So it'll say teacher writes 3 times 10. Now I always typed it out, and then say the product. I always say it. I know some people said they like to get the students to write it. I think it takes up too much time. The main part of the lesson, I think, is what you need to focus on. And this is just kind of like review and fluency. And so I would say 3 times 10 is 30. Okay. 3 times 100 is 300. 3 times 1,000 is
3,000.
And then we go on, and it tells you right below where it says student, says 30. It says repeat the process, and it gives you tons of more examples that you can use. So if they need to be challenged, you can say, let me find it, like 32 times 1,000 is 32,000. And so if I added more examples, like if this wasn't enough for them, and I'm like, okay, they need more. Normally I'd have more than just 3. But if this wasn't enough, then I would say, then I would write that up here, 32 times 1,000. This is how I get in my Promethean board for some of you who may need to know how to get that more involved in your class. And then they say 32,000. I don't write 32,000. I just go ahead and write the next one. Okay, that just wastes too much time. You have to cut corners where you can because it's long. So you want to get through it all. Okay, I talk fast when I get a little nervous, so the camera's recording me, so I'm a little nervous. So, anyway, that's very quick. That takes like 3 minutes tops. Okay, it's very, very quick. So after that, I move on to the next thing, which is the application problem. So you're going to flip to page. You're going to skip page 14 at page 15. Page 14 has the other 2 fluency activities. If you decided to do, the second one or the third one. That. So you're on page 15. At the top it says application problem. This is review. Since this is lesson 1, this is reviewing from module 1. Okay. So this is the top surface of a desk has the length of 5.6 feet. Okay. So all I'm doing is I just write application problem review, and then I write whatever the application problem is, and we work it out together on here. Okay. So as you can see, it tells you kind of how to do it, okay? So it doesn't just leave you stranded with the new concept. It gives you examples on how to do it. So, sorry. The length is 4 times the width. What is the width of the desk? So the top surface of the desk is 5.6 feet. Okay. So what you're going to draw is you're going to draw. You pretty much, it gives you the example. So you're just doing exactly what it says. So you're drawing this. I think that, yeah, by 4. Okay. So you divide it up into 4. My lines aren't equal. Okay. And so what you're doing is, it's almost like I used to tell my students, it's kind of, they would learn it one of 2 ways. They're saying instead of, was it 5.6? Yes, 5.6, okay? 5.6, the 6 is in the what place? The 10th place, so it's 56 tenths with no decimal, okay? So that's what they learn in Module 1. So if you're like, what? Okay, they're learning that in Module 1, how to transfer. Their fluency would be 5.6 is how many tenths, you guys? And they would say, oh, 56. Okay, that's what they've already learned, okay? And so, I keep running through this. So, 5.6, okay, it's 56 tenths. So this whole thing here is 56 tenths. Does that make sense? So 56 tenths. Okay? And then you're dividing it by 4. Well, what's 56 divided by 4? If you don't know, if they don't know, most kids don't. Look, y'all are like, oh, no. Okay, so you can divide it out. You can always do this. Okay? Right? It's what? 18? Okay. I didn't know either, to be honest. Okay. I mean, you know, so 18. Okay. Is it 14?
It's 18.
It's 18. Wait.
Now we'll have to do this.
4 goes into 4. 16.
It's 18, right?
4 goes into 16.
4 times. 14.
It is 14. Okay, so 14.
We're teachers.
Okay. So the students will figure out, hopefully, the students will figure out too much. It's the end of the day. We have an excuse. It's the end of the day. Okay. On week 1, it's the end of the day. So this is our excuse. So since it said up here, it has 5.6 feet. Okay. It's divided by 4 times. The length is 4 times the width. What is the width? So you're dividing it by 4. Okay. Now you have to pre-teach them how to decode these word problems, okay? Otherwise, they're going to try to multiply, okay? And they need to divide here. So that's something that you'll have to pre-teach. So, excuse me.
May I ask a quick question?
Sure, yes.
Did you write in this picture in
No.
writing? It's already in there.
It's already in there.
Okay, I don't have a manual yet. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is already in there. And you can come look at my manuals anytime you want to. Yeah, this is already in there. The only thing I wrote, y'all can see like review and mini lesson, main lesson, and those are the things I wrote. For those of you on the video, if you want a copy, I have it up there. All right. So anyway, so 56, and they're dividing it by 4. So they divided 56 by 4, and we got the 14. Eventually, we got the 14. Okay. So then it's 14 what? Tenths. Okay. So it's 14 tenths. Well, they're not going to take 14 tenths as your answer. Okay, so you have to convert it back with a decimal. So then this is what they learn in Module 1, okay? You have to learn how to convert 14 tenths back into a decimal. So not only in Module 1 do we learn to convert the decimal to word form, but we learn to convert it backwards. So 14 tenths, I say tenths, then that means the last digit is in the tenths place. So this is in the tenths, so that means your decimal would go here. So Module 1, they're learning place value, pretty much, okay? So that is your answer. 1.4 would be your answer. 1.4 feet. Okay? So basically, instead of dividing 5.6 by 4, the whole concept of Eureka math, it seems more complicated than it does. You're like, why can't you just divide it by 4? That's what I thought too. I was like, okay, this makes sense to me because I'm good at math, but why couldn't we just divide by 4 for those who, 5.6 divided by 4, that's easy. We did that. 56 divided by 4 if we need to find the answer. What Eureka Math is trying to do, I think, is trying to get them to understand what's going on behind the math. Does that make sense? Like, I always tell them, you want to know what's going on behind the numbers. It's not, you don't just divide because the universe says to divide. Does that make sense? Like, there has them drawing pictures and it has them dividing it up. And so they're trying to get the students, I think, to understand what's going on behind, so they have, like, the concept. Even if they don't necessarily have the calculation part, they've got the concept. And then if they've got the concept, then the calculation part comes with practice, fluency. Okay. Okay. So then we do the review problem together. That should take 5 minutes. So far we're like 8 minutes in the lesson. Okay. Then this was, I always put the objective, which the objective was on the first page. And I always tell them I want them to try 80% accuracy. Okay, so this is the lesson concept. Down here where it says concept development, this is where I'm at. Okay, this is the main part of the lesson. All I did was just type up the examples that it gave right there. Okay, and then I familiarized myself with what the teacher's supposed to say. The students will never say what the students are supposed to say on here. I don't know what class they're teaching, but the students will never say that. Anyway, so I just kind of familiarized myself with what the teacher says. And if you are following what the teacher says and you're doing what it says on here, then if you just like work, if you don't know how to do it, what I used to do is I would just take, okay, the first or second one, and I would go through and listen to what the teacher's saying on here and just work the problem myself, and then it helped me learn it. I mean, so then I was like, oh, okay, that's easy. Let me go back and just talk real quick. So this one, they are going to, multiply multi-digit whole numbers and multiples of 10 using the place value patterns, okay, and distributive property. Okay, so then you have 4 times 30, and I don't know, okay, there's no picture, but this one's pretty self-explanatory, okay. So if you read what the teacher says in the first one, to find the product, start by multiplying the whole numbers, remembering to state the unit in your product. So, for example, if they said 4 times 30, okay, what I would tell them to do is just say, convert it into, now this, at this point, I would not make them convert it into like tenths. Does that make sense? Because 30 would just be 30 tenths. Does that make sense? So it kind of didn't, you have to, it's kind of a trial and error. The first year you teach it, it will be kind of like a trial and error. You'll see what sticks and what doesn't. And so you have to kind of be flexible there too. Or say, okay, you know what, scratch that, let's do it this way, and then see if that works. But if it was like 3.8 or something, then I would try to tell them to move it like to tenths or something like that. This would be 40 tenths, and that would be 0.0. Again, they're learning this in Module 1, okay? So if this was, I'm going to show you guys. So if this was 4 times 3.8, then they would know that if nothing is there, then there's a 0 there. Does that make sense? So the place here would be 40 because you're looking for the tenth place. So that would be 0. So that would make it 40 tenths. Do you see that? I'm sorry for not doing a great job explaining it. So it would be 40 tenths times 38 tenths. And then they would work that out and then put it back into decimal forms. Does that make sense? Y'all see what I'm saying? At this point in the lesson, since this is the first time it's being introduced, I did not make them do that. I tried to, but then it didn't make a lot of sense to me. So I had to say, okay, you know what, let's just do it this way. So I just did, I had to take away the 0 for a second. If it's an even number, no decimals, take away the 0, okay? And then they just did 4 times 3, which is 12, okay? And then they added the 0 back in, 120, okay? That is the way I think we kind of learned it too. And so I incorporated that in and then showed them like, okay, as it gets harder, you can't use that strategy anymore. You might have to use another strategy. So let's talk about another strategy that you can use. And there you've got your multiple strategies, okay? And I think that hits a point on Team Rubric anyway. So you have multiple strategies to go about that. So as you can tell, you go through here to do the last one. 4 times 3 is 12. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. So that's 120,000, okay?
So can I ask a question?
Sure, yes.
So if we actually vary, if we have to, we're obviously going to have to vary from this plan.
A little bit,
Some
yes.
bit.
Yes.
Some bit, listen. Somewhat. We
Yes.
have to.
Yes.
And when they come in and we have to go scratch that, let's try it this way.
Mhm.
That's okay. If the
Well,
kids are not getting it.
I think that is very professional and shows a good teacher anyway. If you say, okay, I'm halfway through this lesson, my kids are not getting this,
Right.
I need to go back and we just need to start over, because if they're not getting this, why finish the lesson? Because
Right.
it's just going to be, So I have done that with Miss Record in the room, and that I know of, she didn't take off any points of that. I've said, you know what, y'all are getting this, hang on, let's go back a slide, we're going to redo it this way, and then we're going to come into this slide, and then they get it better. And that I know of, that didn't cost me anything. So, I mean, if you're worried about that.
That's just kind of that's a real life situation.
I mean, it
With the
is.
kids, you
It
have
really
to
is.
go back
Yes.
5 minutes or 10 minutes sometimes and go, let's go back and repeat
Right.
this a different way.
And I always look for the majority. And you'll see that in a second. I have a fist of 5 up here. I try to do that every single lesson, because if they are not, I need to make sure they're getting it. Otherwise, I don't want to just go on without them getting it, because then I might as well not even taught that day. You know what I mean? I might as well just sit at my desk and grade papers or something, you know?
Right.
I try to teach it to where they can get it. And this may not work for my class this year. It's kind of, you have to go with the flow. Some parts of this will be like a skeleton. You will take some parts and you may have to do it kind of show it their way. But this is very beneficial. And like I said, when it gets towards the decimals, like 3.8 times 4, then you know to put 4.0, and that's 38 times 40 tenths. So that's beneficial, and that does go with this. To me, this part, just to say, you could say 40 tenths times 30 tenths. You could do that, but like it really, to me, they didn't.
Some kids are going to give you the deer in the headlight
Yes.
look when you do that.
Yes. Now, Miss Lewis's class got that part, we're turning it into tenths, because remember I taught your class first last year. They got that part perfectly fine. My class, like deer in the headlight look, really. And so I went back and did it this way. And then the next day, I went back and did a quick review and told Miss Lewis's the class. They said, oh, that's easier. And so I do go by this. I would say about 90%, 80, 90% of the time, depending on the lesson. But there's some times when this is confusing. And I think it's just if they learn it in kindergarten, they learn it all the way up, then it'll be less confusing for them. And the more we teach it, it's going to be less confusing. But coming from like 4th grade, or because we didn't use this, and so they come straight into it and they don't get it. But I think it would be really, really beneficial for them if they had this every single year. Does that make sense? And then they getting used to the terminology, getting used to how you're drawing out the squares and how and it's not going to be as foreign to them anymore. So I guess right now, last year, and probably this year a little too, I'm kind of almost meshing the two. I'm trying to mostly stick to this. I am using this. I'm sticking to it. But if I have to mesh the two, just to kind of blend them into it, does that make sense? Then I'll do that if I have to, just so they're not just completely thrown off the bus.
Kind of say where you used to do it, or you might have heard it this way. This is
Right.
what we're doing now.
This is what we're doing now. You did it this way, or like this. It was easier for them to do it this way, which is kind of how we did it before. So it was easier for them to do it this way, and as we got into a little more complicated stuff, then I would show them this way, and it would make sense to them. So it's almost like I use a little bit of what they've already been kind of learning and meshed with this new, and it's just kind of like a blending year, you know what I mean? And you may have to do that with your 4th graders, 2nd graders. You may have to do that. We have 3rd graders in here? No, I didn't think so. I thought all was in 2nd. Okay, so after they do that, this is where I do most of my teaching from, is these examples here. So I'll do a couple examples with them. And I think this lesson was kind of easy for me. I mean, it may not be as easy for them. Yeah, I think it was pretty easy. So the lessons take many steps. You don't have to say, okay, they want this big concept, now I've got to, break this lesson off into 4 pieces. The only time you should have to break a lesson off and like teach part of it one day and part of it the other way is if it is hard for them and you need to just teach the same lesson 2 days. Does that make sense? Maybe not the exact same examples, but you have to hone in on like, okay, you've got to get this first before you can move to this. But for the most part, these are, if you look through the rest of the pages at the problems, they're all identical to this. They're just identical. And what I they're just the numbers are getting a little bigger, but that's it. You see what I'm saying? And so they do that. And then, like lesson number 2 or 3 will have where they have a decimal in it, and we'll start doing it that way. Does that make sense? So it builds the lessons for you. It doesn't say, here, it's kind of like the standards. Before you just had to go by the standards. Here's what I want them to know at the end. Well, then you had to build the steps to get there. Does that make sense? This is already building the steps for you. Okay? It seems like a lot of work, but it's actually kind of less work because it has it here for you. Okay. So anyway, so then I would move on. So I did always the first problem, the first couple of problems that it gives as the lesson concept, and I would do most of my teaching there. That would take about 15 minutes. Okay. I would talk to them. If the students didn't get it, I would get another student to help, or I'd go over there and say, okay, let me show you this way. I would move around the room, and if students need something to do, I'd write just a couple more like those. That was easy. It's easy to make up. And then let them, okay, y'all do this real quick, and I'm going to talk to this person. And that's where I did most of my instructing. Then that was just to show them the concept. So then I said, okay, everybody come back together, and I'm going to model it. And I would model at least 2 problems. And the modeling helps. It really does. And it helps me too. Because the modeling is where you build your routine. Like, this is what you should do, this is what you should do, this is what you do. It's, well, you build your routine in the lesson concept, but you're really drilling it right now. You're drilling this. Do this first. You mark out your zeros first. Always mark out your, or whatever you're doing. Then you take the two numbers that are left. 6 times 5 is 30. 30. Okay? After you do that, now when I model, obviously I don't call for them, I just watch. And then you add your zeros back on, so 3 more zeros. Okay? So that's what I would model that for them, step by step by step for each problem. Okay? And they would get that in the next couple of problems. So after I model, I will go to the next one. This is we do. Oh, I have these covered up. These are covering up like questions to ask. So this is we do whole group. So then we all come back together again, and we're doing. They watch me for 2 problems. Then we do another problem together. So the concept is like we do, then I do, then we do again. Okay. The concept development a couple slides ago was just mainly to introduce to them what we're doing. It's very easy. This is where it gets a little more complicated. Okay. So they do 451 times 8. Excuse me. So this is where they could use the area model, and they learn all this in Module 1. Okay. So we would say, how would you normally do this problem, 451 times 8? And they would say, oh, might do it standard algorithm, might do it area model. However, I'm trying to find where I'm at, sorry. I am, okay, right here on page 17. Okay, so they find 451 times 8 using any method they want. The area model, do y'all know the area model? Do y'all know that? Okay, I thought so. Or they could do 451 with 8 in it, standard algorithm way, however they wanted to find it. Then it would change to 451 times 80. Excuse me. 451 times 80, and then I would add the zeros. I don't actually know if I have this later on. I have to check. But 451 times 80, and I might practice with the zeros, okay? And say, okay, so how is that different? And that might be one of my questions. I don't know. Oh, here it is. Okay. So how can you use this problem after they've false solved it anyway? How can you use that to solve this problem? So then they say, oh, well, I did this one, area model, standard algorithm, found the answer. Now all I got to do is pop that 0 on the end. Does that make sense? So they're it's just slowly building, okay? Excuse me, my throat is dry. Okay, so it's slowly building. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so then we do, and now let them do partner work. They have, this is kind of similar to what we just did, the 451 times 8. Well, now it's 4,510 times 80. And so then they would work it the same way. They knew that 451 times 8 was X, whatever it was. And so they'd mark out their 2 zeros, right? And then they did 451 times 8, which was whatever it was, okay? And then they're adding those 2 zeros back in. And so, whatever, let's just do 451 times 8. It's driving me crazy that I don't know the answer. Okay, so this is 3,608. Okay, so 3,608 is 451 times 4, or 451 times 8. And then, since they took those 2 zeros out, they just popped them right back on, added the 2 zeros, and then there's their answer. Does that make sense? So it says, okay, this is how you did it. So it's doing a little blending for you too, but you kind of have to do some of the blending yourself, I think, especially if they're not used to this concept. They might just say, why can't we just do 4,510 times 80 and just write it out like that? Well, you can, but it's easier to do it this way. Does that make sense? It's easier if you do it this way. And sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's a little harder, but they're trying to get you to understand what's going on behind the numbers. In this lesson, they're trying to get you to understand that 451 times 8 is very, very similar to 4,510 times 80. We understand that as adults, I think, but they may not understand that, and that's what it's trying to get that, because, again, all through Module 2, if they have this on Lesson 1, they're going to build on it all through Module 2, okay? So by the end of Module 2, I don't even know what the last lesson is, but they're going to be talking about something that if they didn't have this concept, that these numbers are very familiar, then they're not going to then they're not going to fully get that lesson. Does that make sense? So it's building all through. And then module 3, it'll start on a little something different, but it pulls from these modules. So it's almost like you get a constant spiral. It's pulling from these modules. Sure.
Another question. Okay, so you have a child, obviously you've taught this before, you have a child that comes in mid-year.
Right.
How does that mesh with, or how did that go with you? Did you have somebody do that?
I did have one child come in mid-year. I was lucky, and he was kind of smarter, so he kind of got caught on really fast. You may have to pull that student into any small group that you do. I try to do one every day. Sometimes, if the lesson is hard, I don't get it in every day, but I try to do it as many days as I can. And if you pull them into your small group, and then if you get finished your small group early, take 5 minutes and teach them maybe an underlying concept that they may not know. Just very quickly, it doesn't have to take longer than 5 minutes. Teach them. And if they don't get it in that 5 minutes, it's like, that's all the time I got. Well, the next day, reiterate again. Just go. And so it does take some catching up. But that's what I would do. That's what I would do. I pulled him into 2 small groups, and he was very smart. Burnell. He was very smart. So.
If they're doing it across the district, maybe.
Right.
Close some of those gaps.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was telling them was if you if it is kind of confusing now for the kids, I think, because they switch from one extreme to the other. But I told them that, you know, it may have to be just a couple of years where we spend blending the two and blending them into this. But once they start at a young age and learn this all the way up, that it'll be more fluent for them. This is the Fist to 5 that I was talking about. If you don't use this, this is a really great tool. All I do is, they know this by memory, stop for a minute, think about the lesson so far. How comfortable do you feel about it? One, they just give me like a fist, means I have no idea what's going on, I need help. If I see a lot of fists to 3, I go back and I reteach. And I say, okay, we got to have more examples than this, if I have time. If not, I'll come back the next day. But if I feel like, if I'm halfway through what I just showed you guys, and I feel like, okay, I don't think they're getting it, I'll do a Fist to 5 there. You know what I mean? But I try to always do a Fist to 5 but right before I give them individual work to do on their own, because I want to know where they're at, and that helps me know who I'm going to pull my small group to. So how comfortable do you feel about Fist? I don't understand it all. 1, I barely understand. I'm not totally clueless, but I barely understand. I understand a little, so it's a little bit more than a 1. 3, I understand, but I need more practice to get it fully. 4, I just need a little bit more practice to get it. And 5, I've got it. I'm ready to move on. So that is a really quick tool. It is so quick.
Are they pretty honest?
I think most of them are. I did come across some last year that would just give me 5 every time, and even though I knew that wasn't, but I got used to who those were, and I would just pull them in a small group anyway. I would just say, you know, that this is.
You can tell by the look over it.
Yeah, they'd just be like, but you could tell all lesson they were like. You know, so I don't know why. I always like really try to teach them that you need to be honest with me because I'm trying to help you, and so that it doesn't get harder every year that you go to school. You know, so anyway, so I do that before I give the individual work. Then I give them the individual work, which is the problem set. So that is the next packet that was behind this one, stapled. It says lesson 1 problem set. It's page 20 in the bottom right corner on this little packet. Anyway. I don't have a lot of time to do the whole thing of problem set. If you try to do everything, like I said, you'd be here, you would just all day trying to teach math. So I always go through the problem set, and I always find maybe like 1 or 2. This one I just did 2 because it's you guys. But I always find like 1 or 2 of that mostly focus on calculation. And then I always find at least 1 or 2, if I have the time, to focus that's like a word problem so that they can get used to those word problems. So I always just pick, you know, I'll usually have about 3 or 4 is what I have. Does not take long. It takes them a little longer. The word problems, it was what holds them up. So you have to practice that all year with the word problems. And the word problems do get complicated, but I think it's good for them because, I mean, it helps them notice any kind of tricks, I guess you'd say. If they find anything on the test that was confusing, it's less confusing for them on the test. And at the end of the year test. So after I give them the individual work or the problem set, they'll have student debrief. Now this is on page, let me find it. This is on page 18, student debrief, 10 minutes. I don't use all of this. I just read right through it, and then I kind of just summarize it and put it up here. Does that make sense? And I usually try to, this is a reflective piece, which is good for the team rubric. It's a reflective piece. They're reflecting on what they've done, kind of sort of like the Fist of Five, but they may write it if you have the time. If not, you may let a couple share, depending on like the question. So take a few moments now and compare your answers with the members of your group. So this one I had them compare with members of their group. I don't always do that. In which problem was the distributive property useful, and which problems was it unnecessary? So the distributive property was where we kind of took out the zeros and that. And which problem was it unnecessary? So like sometimes like the 451 times 8, they didn't have to use that on there, so that was unnecessary. So they, and if they did some of the problem sets, depending on the question I asked, I would give them one in the problem set that wasn't necessary, so that they could do that. So just making sure that everything aligns is the main thing. Excuse me. Then I had a closure. I remind them what we talked about. We also talked about the area model. Now this exit ticket. And then I'll give them the exit ticket. This is, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, this is it. This is off this exit ticket sheet. Okay. At this time when I was teaching this, we didn't get our booklets until about halfway through Module 2. So at this time I didn't, so I just typed it up and put it right on the board. And so if you want to save some of your copies, you can get them to use their own paper and just type it up and put it right on the board. This should not take that long. I don't give them really, really hard ones on here, and I always try to give them a question to answer to. That way I can see the concept. Because again, Eureka Math, I think, is trying to build like the concept. How do you, 2 plus 2 is 4, but if you take 2 apples and you put 2 more with it, and you count them all together. It's trying to what's behind the numbers. And then, okay, that's it. But we also have this homework packet. That's the last thing. The homework packet is really, really useful. I used it for grades last year because it is identical to the problem set, just different numbers. So if they can do questions off the problem set, or like I think Ms. Tompkins did this last year, if I'm not mistaken. She would do the problem set, the whole problem set with her students, and then the next day this would be their bell work, and she might take a grade on it. Or maybe not bell work, but she'd give this to them the next day and take a grade on it, because it is identical except different numbers. And so you always want to make sure before you, I use this for grades, but if you use this for grades, you want to make sure that they understand, obviously. They're not totally lost. But that's where your small group. Usually while I give them, I always gave them individual work that day because it's fresh on their mind, and then I'd give them review the next day. And then if I needed to go back and make or do something, then I would. But when I gave them this individual work, or maybe when they do the problem set or something like that, is when I did my small groups. And I would pull, and we'd work on like questions from the problem set together. Even if they already kind of did it, they may not have done it right, so we did it together. I'm trying to think of what else. It seems like a lot to fit into one day. It really does. You have to cut corners where you can, but don't cut any important corners off.
It does tell you the guide somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, you can skip some lessons. We skipped a few last year. We didn't have the guide, but we skipped a few that we like combined lessons. Like we took just bits and pieces of this and tried to teach it and combine it with combined lessons. I think you can do that, but she has a guide, I think she emailed it to everybody.
Your notes. Oh, was that in your teacher thing then?
I can't remember. I just remember seeing it. I can't remember. It might have been. I think it was that day with Mary, Miss Myers.
So it's your big binder, your big teacher binder.
It may be in there.
I think it's like those additional documents that are at the very first.
Okay, it may be. It may be. So I know you most likely have it. If you don't, let us know.
How often does it assess, like do an assessment?
It comes with a mid-module assessment and like an end-of-module assessment. You can use those. Last year, we did not use those. We used them as assessments, but not like a giant test, because we used that performance coach book as a test. I guess I could turn this off now. I'm gonna turn